All right, hello again. So in this video, we're going to go over the CSS Box Model, which is the parts of a container in on an HTML and CSS web page thing. Okay, so I wanted to show you this illustration first so you know what we're talking about. So we're talking about the pieces, parts of a container, right? And this is block elements like paragraphs, list items, the body of the page itself, headers, footers, all that kind of stuff. So inside the middle, you've got your content, right? So that can either have a specific height or width, or it can be determined by whatever's the content is can help determine the size of it. We'll see that as we go along. Excuse me. The next thing after that, let me try to zoom in here a little bit better, is the padding. So the padding is outside of the content. So think about if you're getting a package from Amazon, or if Amazon's not around anymore by the time you see this video, maybe it's from your mom or something. She sent you something, she's very nice, she sent you like some chocolate or a new pillow or something. So you've got your content in there as your actual gift, right? And then you've got padding or you've got packaging in there. Could be bubble wrap, could be newspaper, whatever, right? So that is outside the content, but then you have the border. So the border is like the cardboard that the box that got shipped was. So that's their border, and all these are optional, by the way. You've got top, right, bottom, and left on all of these. So, well, not the content, but you have top padding, right padding, bottom padding, left padding. Same for the border. And then outside the border, you have space outside your container, basically, which is margin. That's the space away from something that pushes away from something. So if you think about, like, you know that if you put paragraphs on a web page, right, they have space between them. That is margin. So you can have top margin, right margin, bottom margin, and left margin. So those are the basic parts of the CSS box model. We're also going to go over a couple of other related things like box sizing, which is different ways you can specify the height and width or how it's measured. Let's put it that way. So we'll go over that. And then we're going to go over the content, like we said, the padding, the border, and the margin. And then there's a couple little bonus elements because I like to make these as long as possible. So you've got border radius. That's how you can round the edges of a container to make it sort of more friendly, more organic, less boxy and sharp, right? So that's border radius. And then the last thing is the overflow property. What happens when you do set a height and width on something and then it doesn't fit? So that's what overflow is about. So we will see how that works in a minute. Okay. So I'm going to go up to the top here. So I gave you a couple of file here, CSS Box Model Start, and then there's a couple of images that go with it. So you should have that. So I'm going to close this sidebar so we have a little more space here. And then I wanted to show you a couple things before we got going a whole lot. So there is box shadow. I wanted to make sure that you knew about box shadow. Let me make this even a little bigger, and then I'll make this a bit smaller. I think it'll still fit. Yeah. So we got box shadow. So that's this subtle little shadow underneath these containers that are on this web page, right? But if you haven't seen that before, so this says box shadow 0, 2 pixels, 6 pixels, and then a color. So the first number is the horizontal offset. So 0 means there isn't any. 2 is the vertical offset, means where is the shadow? Is it up or down? 2 pixels is down. Positive numbers go to the right and down. Negative numbers go to the left and up. And then 6 pixel is the blur. That's the blurred edge of that shadow. And then the last part is the color. So the important part about this color part is RGBA, which is red, green, and blue. So this is black, right? 0, 0, 0 is black. But 0.7, what does that mean? That means that that shadow is 7% opaque. If I put, you don't have to do this, but if I put 1.0 here, then you'll see the shadow is solid as up against the edge of that. So I'm going to undo that. So to make it subtler, you make it more transparent, and that's what this last number is. That's alpha, which is transparency. So I wanted to make sure you knew that. And maybe you've seen that before, hopefully. And then the other part is, you've got background color again. Or that was box shadow, right? This is background color, which has a similar sort of look to it. So we've got background color. This is RGBA again. But here we've got the color and then the opacity again. So that's this shade color. So I put a class of shade on these content containers so that you could see through them, right? So this is like a dark red, but since it's set to 0.2, that's 20% opacity, which is a kind of a light red. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Also, before we get started, down here in the actual code, there's just these boxes and they have a bunch of classes on them. So I just added classes to these, and we're just going to be editing the CSS, so we don't have to go down and do anything in the HTML, I don't think, unless I made a huge mistake or something. Okay, so the first thing is box sizing. So box sizing is how the size of a box is measured. So you have a couple of options here. You can do content box or you can do border box. Content box is the default. So if I said I'm going to make this box 200 pixels wide and 60 pixels high, or 200 pixels wide, let's just do that part. Then you can see that this box is not actually 200 pixels wide. I actually put this handy dandy layout image in the background of it. That's not 200. 200 is here. This is 50, 100, 150, 200. It's about 250. Well, I think it's exactly 250 actually. So why is it not 250? Because when you give a width of 200 to something and its content, its box sizing content box, it only counts the content. So the padding, which is here, which we haven't gotten to yet, and the border are extra. So your 200 pixel wide box is not 200 pixels wide. So that gets confusing, right? So what a lot of times you'll see is CSS resets or just CSS code in general. People will say box sizing border box. If you say border box, then the 200 pixels for the width counts the padding, which is this, and the border, which is this. So it makes a little more sense, a little more intuitive. So I want to make sure that you all understood that as far as that goes. Okay, so let's go down to content. So we're just going to go down, like I said, and start editing things. I'm going to go down to line 99 approximately, which is where the content demo is. All right, so the content is obviously your content. So it's set, its size is set by the height and width, unless if there's no height and width, then the height, width, and height are determined by the content, whatever's inside of it. So there's an image in there, some text in there, whatever. The content area will expand to fit. That's the default, right? You can make it not fit, which we'll see a little bit later, but by default, it's just going to get bigger. So if I added a bunch of text to this container, it would just get bigger and hold all that content, right? But you can apply an explicit height or width. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to go down to content demo, and we're going to say width of 200 pixels. And let me tab over here. This is looking bad here. And then, so now it's 200 pixels wide, and then I'll give it a height of 60 pixels. Same as it says here. This is not the actual code. This is just kind of what's in there. So now it's got a height and width of 200. You can see the content is still the same size, but now we said make this box 200 pixels wide and 60 pixels high. By the way, you can use whatever unit you want to use here as long as it's a legal unit, right? So if I said 200% instead of 200 pixels, what happened? Oh, it's 200%. That's the percentage is relative to the container that you're in. So that means it's going to be twice as wide as our container, and it's going to leak out over here and create a really strange thing going on. So you can use all kinds of units. You could use centimeters, inches. Nobody does that, but you could. You could use EMs. You could use REMs, which are EM units. You can use pixels, percent, whatever. Often it's pixels. So that's PX, right? You can even mix these two. So I could say 5 rem, which is like 5 letters high. Now that's like 5 lines high. So I'm undoing that. But you get the idea. So that's the content, right? That's the innermost part of that's your actual stuff, the stuff in your package that you got from your mom, right? The second part is padding. So padding, again, go back to our illustration here. Padding is the space outside the content but before the border, right? So let's get back down to padding here. So padding and margin follow the same kind of pattern. You can set all 4 sides if you want. You can even do it separately. You can say padding left, padding right, padding bottom, padding top. You could do it that way. You can also use the padding shorthand, which is this. So you just say padding. Usually you're not going to say padding left, padding right, padding bottom, padding top. It's just extra typing, right? So this is the shorthand. So the way the shorthand works is if you just use one number, it sets all the sides to 20. If it says 20, right? If you say 20 and then a space and then 10, it's going to set the top and bottom to 20 and the right and left to 10. So the way it works is, it works like, think of it as a clock, right? So the first number is the top, the second number is the right, the third is the bottom, and the fourth is the left. So if there's any missing numbers, like there are in these two, then the opposite, the sides are the same as their opposite. Meaning, if this is 20, then this is 20. If this is 10, then this is 10. If you specifically set all 5 or 4 sides, right, then it's going to be all 4. So this one, padding 20, 10, 30, and 5, means 20 here, 10 here, 30 here, and 5 there. So you can set 1, 2, 3, or 4, whatever you want. It'll just fill in the missing ones with the opposite side, whatever's on the opposite side. So let's go ahead and try this. Let's go ahead and we're just going to put in what we have here. We're going to say padding. And it's going to be 20 pixels, 10 pixels, 30 pixels, and 5 pixels. And let's tab this over so it looks a little better as well. So now we've got 30, oops, I don't know why that did that. We got 20 there. I've got extra characters in there. 20, 10, 30, and 5. So that's 20 there, 10 there, 30 there, and 5 there. Just a reminder also, anytime I want, I can right click on this and go to the inspector. That works in Chrome or Firefox, probably Safari and things too. And if I go here and select that box, it gives you a little diagram showing you all this in the inspector. So there's my content, 200 by 60, right? There's my padding of 20, 10, 30, and 5. That's the green part. And then there's no border and no margin. Well, there is a margin because it's set somewhere else, but we'll ignore that for brevity. So remember, anytime you can go in and inspect and see what's going on as far as the layout goes. You can also turn this on and off, of course, right? So if I click on the little checkbox, I turn it off. So if you see if I turn off that padding right there or turn it on, the box gets bigger, right? Because it's adding more padding to that box. So hopefully you knew that, but if you didn't, you do now. Awesome, right? Okay, so that is padding. The next one out is border. So you've got, again, going back to our illustration again, you've got content, padding, and then border. So all these are optional, by the way. You don't have to set padding. You don't have to set borders or margin, but there is some defaults that are set by the CSS rules from the browser, like space between paragraphs, for example, but you can turn that off or change it, whatever you want. That's what CSS is for, right? So we're gonna go down to border. So border can be set a couple of different ways. It can be set all separately, like we didn't do up here with padding left, padding top, padding bottom, etc. Or you can use a shorthand, which most people use, right? So we'll try it both ways. We'll do it first time with longhand or each individual, right? So I'm going to say border each individual property. I'm going to say border dash width, and we'll do 4 pixels. I don't think we'll see anything yet because we don't have a style yet. So I'm setting it on this box right here. So I have a border width of 4. I don't see anything yet, but I will after I do a style, I think. So I'm going to say border dash width, and let's do border dash style. I knew I messed that up. Border dash style, and let's go with dashed. All right, so now I have a dashed border. So there's a bunch of different styles. We'll come back to that in a second. Let's change the color real quick. Let's say border dash color, and let's do what we have in example there, FF8800, which is kind of orangey. Very, very orange, right? So now I've got a 4-pixel thick dashed border, and it's orange. I'm gonna tab over it because I just can't stand this looking that way. I could also right-click and say Format, but I won't do that. So that's that. If I go back and delete back to the colon there and then put the colon, you can see all the different styles. So let's say I wanted to see what double look like. There's double. So there's a bunch of different styles in there. Yeah, check them out, play with them if you want. I'm gonna put that back to dashed. So there's a dashed border. Good. So that gets a little tedious, right, to put all 3 of those in there. So you can use the border shorthand. So I'm gonna say border. We're going to the next one here. And then a colon. And then we're just gonna go, I'm going down here. 3 pixels, solid, and the color I have is 0074D9. No good reason for that, but that's the color I have, so I'll use that one. It's kind of a blue-ish. So now we've done the border width, which is 3, the border style, which is solid, which is just a regular old border, and then the border color, which is this blue color. So that is the shorthand, a little bit faster, right? So that's the way you'll see it most of the time. You can also, like you could with padding and other things, you can set individual sides. So if I go below that, I could say border dash left dash width. Let's do that. And I'll do 10 pixels instead. So now the left border is 10 pixels. So we're basically overriding it. This is a good example of the cascade, right? So these 2 styles are conflicting. Here I'm saying I want a 3-pixel wide border. Here I'm saying I want a 10-pixel wide border. This one comes last, so it's overriding the 3, and now I've got that on the left. I can also override the style if I don't like it. I'm going to say border dash left dash style. Could have typed that whole thing out a little bit easier. And I'm going to say, let's say double, so you can for sure see it. All right, so that looks terrible. Let's do border dash left dash color to make it even worse. Border dash left dash color. And let's go with a red border. So let's go FF0000. All right. Terrible. Looks like some sort of weird flag, right? But what I'm trying to get you to see is you can specify any side you want. It could be left, could be right, could be bottom, could be top. You can do them individually. You can do them with the shorthand. You can do them longhand or any side you want. So there's a million combinations that you could, actually more than a million. I don't even know. I should ask ChatGPT how many combinations there are, but there's a lot, right? So don't be afraid to mix that up. You'll see some pretty cool styles of what people have done as far as like making containers that have interesting borders and shapes and things. There's even a border image property, but I'm not showing you in this video, but you check that out too. You can put an image inside the border, which is kind of cool. Maybe you'll see that in a different video. All right, so that is the border properties. So next we're going to go down to the next property, which is margin. So margin again, back to our illustration again. Margin again is the space outside the border. So it's empty space. So you can use it to push things apart from each other, make space around things, etc. It's how the spacing between headings are and lists and paragraphs and all that kind of stuff. So it works the same as padding, right? So you could just put one number and that will set all the sides. If you put two, same thing. It's the top and the bottom and the left and the right and the left. If you put all four, it's all four, right? So you can do it that way. You can also say margin dash left, margin dash right, same as you did on the other one. So there's lots of different combinations of these, but they're pretty intuitive, right? I could say margin dash left, that will set the margin on the left. So we won't do that part because that'll be very tedious for everybody. So let's go to margin demo and add a margin. So I'm going to say margin. And then I'm going to do just what I have in there in the demo. We're going to do 30 pixels, 10 pixels, 20 pixels, and 5 pixels, right? So you can't see that really because, let me tab this over again, make it pretty. Because we're seeing 30 pixels here, 10 here. There's nothing over here anyway, so you're not going to see that. 20 there and 5 there. You probably can't see that it moved over a tiny bit. Again, if I inspect this, if I go to the inspector, now you can see it. The orange part there is the margin. So 30 up here. Let me roll over that. I can't do both. So if you're looking at the orange part, the top part is 30, the right part is 10, the bottom part is 20, and the left is 5. So that's that orange space outside the container, right? Makes sense? One more thing about margins is, which I don't have in this demo, but you just have to kind of remember it, is if I have margins on boxes that are stacked on top of each other, they will collapse. Meaning, like if I had 2 of these boxes, you would not, if say I had another of these boxes right on top of this one, it wouldn't be 30 plus 20. Like if I had a box up here that had a bottom margin of 20, it wouldn't be 50, it would be 30. They collapse on each other. And there's a good reason for that. Say you have paragraphs, right, that have a margin between them, which you do, you wouldn't want the first space above the paragraph to be different from the next 2 paragraphs, right? Because if they stacked, they would be different. So that's why one reason why they collapse. You'll see it when you see it, right? But just remember that if you set 2 margins that overlap, they're going to take the biggest value. Whatever's biggest is going to be the actual margin. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, the next thing is, and that's the end of the sort of box model part of our program. But then the next part is border radius, which is, I thought I would throw this in here because it's kind of a cool way to make boxes look not so boxy, right? You round them off, you make them look a little bit better. A little softer, a little more organic, not so pointy and aggressive, right? So this is border radius. So border radius, you can set all 4 sides at once if you just use a number. You can set the top left and bottom, or top left and bottom right, and then the top right and the bottom left with 2 numbers. You'll see how this works in a second. You can set all 4 just like before. It's kind of, but at this time, instead of starting at the top and the right and the bottom and the left, it starts in the top left corner and then the top right corner, right? So it's not in the middle, it's on the left. So we're starting here and then 1, 2, 3, 4 corners there. Hopefully that makes sense. You can even do this sort of slash thing, which creates elliptical corners. It's a little bit not that intuitive, but you'll see what it does. I thought I'd throw it in here. So let's go down to border radius 1 and say border dash radius. And then we're going to do just 20 pixels. So there you've got a border radius of 20 pixels. Interesting to note here, I hope you guys see that the text is kind of leaking outside of that. So the text is still acting like the box is out here, which it actually is. We're just rounding the visual part of the box. So if you wanted to get this text farther inside, you'd have to use some padding in there, which you could to get that. You don't want text overlapping the edge of the border, but I thought I would leave that way so you could see what's going on. So that's border radius of 20 pixels. The next one, we're going to use 2 values, so border radius 2. Let's say border dash radius, and then we're going to say 40 pixels and then 10 pixels. And let me tab this over so it looks a little better. So if you specify 2 numbers, it's sort of like the padding and the margin, right? The top, this one is going to be 40. This one's going to be 40. The opposite side, the second number is 10, so this one's going to be 10. And this one's going to be 10. You get this kind of funky Star Trek shape, right? I don't know why I said Star Trek, but it reminded me of Star Trek. Maybe it looks like they're little badges. I don't know. So that is if you put 2 numbers on there. The next one, we're just going to copy and paste here to save a tiny bit of time. I'm going to copy that and paste. But this time, we're going to put a slash between them. And it is different. So now you're going to get, so you can get a sort of an elliptical sort of shape this way, but basically it's 40 pixels on the X value. The horizontal is 40 radius, and then the vertical is 10. So that's why I'm getting longer sides here of the radius. I don't even know if it's kind of hard to see, right? 40 pixels here and here this way and that way and that way. And then 10 this way, vertical, 10, 10, and 10. So you get that shape there. And there's a million, again, combinations of these things to do different kinds of effects and stuff. I think you can probably look up examples too. The next one is this cool way, which I don't have a space there. Go ahead and make a space under border radius for circle. This is a cool little tip that you can do. You can use border radius to do a circular image like you might see for an avatar or like a badge or something like that, right? So I have to start basically with a square. So I have a square image, but more importantly, a square box. So I've got a height of 100 and a width of 100. So this is a square container. And this is a background image. It's not a regular image. It would work with an inline image too, but I did it with a background image. And then I use background size contain to make sure the image fit inside the little box. But here's the cool part. So if I just add, it's really easy. You just add border radius of 50%, and you get a circular image. Look at that. That's cool, right? You could use that on social media, get all kinds of hits and go viral and stuff. Get famous, right? We all want to be famous. So now, why does this work as a circle? Because we are using a percentage, so it's 50% of the width, which goes to there, and 50% of the height, which goes to there. And if you do that sort of math trigonometry stuff, you get a circle. Pretty cool, huh? So that's a quick way to do like a circular kind of image or badge or avatar or something like that. All right, I think we're on the last one. So the last one is, and this is also not part of the box model per se, it's what happens when you have a box and stuff doesn't fit. What happens to it? Does it leak out? What happens? So we're gonna go through that. So the first one, we're gonna add overflow 1. We're just gonna add the overflow property, and we're gonna say visible. So visible is the default, so nothing happens. So this is what happens by default. If you have a box where the content doesn't fit, here is the content. It does not fit, so it leaks out. It falls out of the box and all over your floor, and you have to sweep it up. So that's a good reason. Like I said earlier, I hope I said earlier, usually you can set a width on something. That's usually the way it's done. Set a width on something because you want to make it a certain width. But let the content determine the height when possible. Unless you really need to not let the content set the height, let the content do it. Because then if you did that, it would fit. Because the box is going to get higher, right? That's what we said at the beginning. The content can determine the space too, if you don't set it specifically. Here it's set specifically. For example, if I comment out this height, now it fits, right? Because I said, oh, be whatever height you need to be to hold your stuff, right? But now it doesn't fit, so it has to go somewhere. So that's what overflow visible does. Number 2 is overflow hidden. So go ahead and say overflow hidden. I don't know why it already said that for me, but it predicted my behavior. And so overflow hidden means the content that doesn't fit is hidden, literally. It's still in the box, technically, but you can't see it, so it's hidden. Makes sense, right? The next one, overflow 3, we're going to say overflow scroll. All right, so what that does is it adds a scroll bar, which is not great in this case. So just a warning, don't do this as far as like, and you see this sometimes on websites. Don't make a little tiny box and then put a bunch of text in it and then make your user like try to grab some tiny scroll bar and scroll to see like one word at a time. That's really kind of mean. It's very mean. Don't do that to your user. So even though you can do this, don't do it unless you really need to. Don't make little scrolly boxes. Definitely don't make little ones. But if you need to scroll, you can do that, right? So that's going to add a scroll bar no matter what. Probably a better option most of the time is overflow auto. I don't know, overflow auto. So what overflow auto does is it will make a scroll bar if it needs it. So if the content does not fit, you see here it also made a horizontal scroll, even though I don't know why, but Here it made a scroll bar. It looks like this one, but because the content doesn't fit. Now, what the cool part about this is, if it does fit, and I have to go, sorry, I have to scroll way down to wherever this is, margin. I should have figured out what line this was on before I did it. Hidden. Sorry. Oh, here it is. This is overflow 4, right? So this is this box right here. So the content does not fit, so it's set to overflow auto, so I get a scroll bar. If I delete some of this content, just temporarily, look at that. So now I took out the content that didn't fit, the scroll bar went away. So if it doesn't fit, you'll get a scroll bar. If it does fit, you won't. So that's probably a better way to do it than actually adding a scroll bar on purpose, unless you need to for some reason. I'm going to undo that so you can kind of see what that's doing. Now I get a scroll bar because it doesn't fit. All right, I think that's it. So in summary, we went through the different parts of the CSS box model, which is content, then padding, then border and margin. And for a good measure, we added a few things about border radius and overflow, and also box shadow and what was the other thing? I'm spacing on what the other thing was. Oh, box sizing, right. So I hope that helps a little bit understanding how the CSS box model works, and I will talk to you again later.